Hi there, everyone, and welcome to Paper Wishes Weekly Webisodes. I'm Sara Newman, and I'm so happy you're joining me for this episode of Saturday with Sara. Today, we're playing with fabulous new paper crafting supplies from our friends at Hunkydory. We have 3 new stamp sets. There's the Grape Hyacinth Happiness, Daffodil Joy, and Anemone Delights. Now, all 3 of these sets have a tag image as well as smaller accents and words and sentiments. Now, in addition, we also have 2 new stencils. So we have the Splendid Script and the Stunning Swirls, both of which are absolutely perfect for card backgrounds. Now these elements come together really easily and they make gorgeous cards. And today I have a couple of projects to share with you and some demos too. As you can see, we have a lot to explore today and I'm so glad you're here. Come play with us. The 3 stamp sets each have a gorgeous tag-shaped image, which just happens to perfectly fit into the envelope from the Tag in a Bag cutting die. And this will give you a really fun project like this one here. I love the Tag in a Bag cutting die, you may have noticed from previous webisodes. And this is just a really fun project and a great way to combine both your stencils as well as your stamps. So the bag shows the Splendid Script stencil, which I stenciled with holly green ink, and the tag is using the Grape Hyacinth image. And I've stamped this, embossed it, and colored it with inks and alcohol markers. So for a small project, there's a lot going on here. So let's start with the stenciling. Okay, I'm going to move aside my project and my stamp and my die. And I'm working onto my craft mat here. This is going to be pretty important because this is going to protect my work surface. Now I've got a piece of just plain smooth white cardstock here. I'm going to position my stencil on top. And what I really recommend, especially with a large stencil surface like this one, I do recommend securing it down with a little bit of low-tack tape. And I'm using the tape from Hunkydory. This is one that I never put away. This is always out on my work surface and it just gets used for so many things. So I'm going to secure this, not only the stencil to the cardstock, but also both of them to my craft mat. And that will just prevent things from sliding around. Now I can choose any kind of dye-based ink and I'm going to use the holly green. This is the one that I had closest to me, but of course any of those beautiful prism dye-based inks will do the trick. Now I've got a blending brush here and all I'm going to do is just apply some ink onto the blending brush and I'm going to, with a gentle circular motion, just apply my ink through the stencil onto the cardstock. So I'm working in a circular fashion and I'm really just going with quite a gentle motion. I'm not pressing really hard into the cardstock or the paper, and just gently apply the ink through here. And you can see where that is coloring through. So maybe pick up a little bit more ink. And here we go. It's a really easy technique to do. And then as I want to intensify the color, I can press a little bit more. And you can see, I think, where there's some darker areas here, I'll leave some light and color some more with a little bit more pressure. And you can take a look and we'll see how this looks when I pull off my stencil. Okay, so that's the process, really quick and easy to do. Pop the lid back onto my ink pad and then let's pull off the tape. I do reuse these little tape pieces, by the way. Don't throw them away because you can use them a couple of times, a good couple of times. And I'm taking care not to slide that stencil around. Pull this piece off here. And then I'm going to lift the stencil up rather than sliding it off. And there we go. So here you can see where that darker pressure was applied and here where it's a little bit lighter. So you can really vary your intensity of your colors You can, of course, combine colors as well, and I'll show you a project that does that too. Anyway, this is a super easy technique to do and a great one for use with your stencils. Okay, so let's take another look at our project here. So as you can see, I've got my tag bag stenciled with that beautiful script stencil. Now what I did here, I only wanted the stenciling on the front of the bag. I didn't want it on the back. So I made sure to die cut my bag piece and then stenciled from here. So that was just a little bit easier than trying to die cut my stenciled piece. A little bit easier for the positioning. And then just simply fold that up. I've wrapped this with some jute twine, and then I have the sentiment from the stamp set on a circular scalloped die cut piece, and I've got a little bit of jute twine tucked back in here as well. Now for the stamping on here, as I mentioned, I've done some heat embossing, I've done some ink blending, and I've also done some alcohol markers. So I'm going to gather a few supplies and then we can get into the stamping technique. I'm going to use my MISTI for the stamping technique. So I've got a few supplies on hand. Of course, my MISTI ready to go. I've got my stamp on one side. On the other side, I have a piece of smooth white cardstock ready to go. I have a piece of scrap paper folded up. This is going to catch my embossing powder. And I'm going to use clear embossing powder for this in combination with the VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And this is going to give me crisp black edges, but I'm also going to get the benefit of having an embossed image, so this will create a resist effect. Okay, so let me set this aside. I've got my embossing powder ready to go, and I'm just going to ink up my stamp. So ink this up with this gorgeous black ink pad. This is one of my favorites. It always gives a great result. And because it is a pigment ink, it means I can use it for stamping. I can also use it for heat embossing because it is a slower drying ink pad. And I love using it in combination with clear embossing powder because it does give you that beautiful polished effect and still that gorgeous rich black color. Okay, so I've stamped this down. I see a little bald patch down there that I missed. This is the beauty of the MISTI, because now I can just ink this up again and go back and stamp it a second time or a third time if I need to. What did we do before our stamp positioners? Wasted a lot of cardstock, I can tell you. Okay, so there is my stamped image. Now working pretty quickly, I'm going to not worry about that inky stamp for right now. Set aside my MISTI. Working onto my craft mat because it is a heat resistant surface. I'm going to grab a piece of scrap paper and I'm simply going to cover this with my clear embossing powder. So I'm just sprinkling this all over, and then I'm going to tap this off. And the reason I'm tapping it into a folded piece of scrap paper is so that I can then funnel all of my excess powder right back into the jar so that nothing goes to waste. And then simply put the lid back on. This is a really important step of the process. And then keeping my cardstock on my craft mat, I'm going to bring in my heat tool and simply melt the embossing powder with the heat of my heat tool. So this takes a couple of minutes, and just in the interest of our time together, I've got a piece that is already heat set. So you can see the difference between the two. This is raised, glossy, beautiful, beautiful image on here. And now I can get to coloring. So I've used a couple of things to color my stamped image. And the first is dye-based ink. So we saw how easy it was to stencil with this ink. It's also easy to blend onto your stamped image. And of course, because I'm working with an embossed image, I don't have to worry about the ink smearing at all. So all I'm going to do is take my blending tool, load this up with some warm honey ink, and I'm just going to blend this on here. I always start with a light amount of pressure, because then you can add more as you wish. And the warm honey is a wonderful color. This is, I think, going to be one of my go-to colors because it just adds a lovely sense of warmth and helps to soften this entire effect. So, just going to continue this as much as I want to. Maybe add a bit more color along the edge where this beautiful border is. And then what I can do is add in some more detailing with some alcohol markers. So let me bring in the markers that I'm using. These are from Spectrum Noir, and these are gorgeous. This is the Tri-Blend collection. And let me move these aside for a second. We can take a look at these. Now the Tri-Blend style of marker, this is going to give you 3 colors in one. So as you can see here, this is the Hydrangea blend. And wherever you've got these lines, this is another pen tip. So here you can see this is the darkest of the 3 colors. In the middle, we have a medium color. And then at the end, you have the lightest color. And you can tell by the tip on here. So from here, I can start coloring. So I'm going to use, this is the Hydrangea blend. I think I'll do the medium color in here. And simply color in my stamped image. And this is just a wonderful technique to have on hand when you've got a beautiful image like any of the stamps that we're looking at today. They are wonderful for coloring in. And the nice thing about these markers is that it's going to give you rich, beautiful color. Because they are alcohol markers, you don't need to worry about them interfering with the inking that you've done underneath. So they're not going to react with the dye-based ink. Nothing's going to smudge or smear, but you are going to have not only the softness of that inked background, but also this beautiful color here. So as I'm kind of just scribbling in the color. These tips on the markers are nice and firm. They're not like a bristle brush that will be better used for covering larger areas. These are great for smaller detail areas. So this is with the lavender, with this shade of the lavender. Maybe if I want this one to be a little bit darker, I can use, let's see, this is the lavender blend. I'm going to go with the darkest of these colors. And maybe we can kind of add a little bit of detailing on here. I'm just following the lines that are printed on the stamped image. So very, very simple and easy to do. And maybe add in a little bit darker up here where there may be some shadows. You don't have to be a colorist. You don't have to be an artist with a capital A to do this, but the effect is beautiful and super simple to do. So that's with my 2 purple colors. Then what about the leaves? So I've got another marker. This is called Dull Green, which I think it's more exciting than a dull green. This is one of those great colors. If you do a lot of coloring with florals, of course, you need to have the flower color, pink, blue, purple, but you also need something for the leaves and the stems, which is what I've got here. So I was using that middle color. Maybe if I want to, again, add some detail, I'll flip this over and use the darkest. So I can, once again, kind of go along these lines here, add in any shading, shadowing. And as you can see, I'm not being terribly precise about this, but the effect is really nice, really easy to do. Okay, and let's see, I also was using, this one is the Coral Blend, and I wanted to add a little bit of an accent here with this border. The raised edge of that embossing is kind of guiding my pen as well, so this helps too. And then let me bring in my original project, and you can see here, I've got some shading down here at the bottom and along the edge. And this is also from the coral, but I was using the lightest. And you can trace some of these swirls if you want to. You can also sort of gently shadow in here. And this, again, blends really nicely with that warm honey ink that we had. So you can add as much or as little color in here as you want to. Kind of blend this out with some of that script that's patterned on here. So much that you can do with this. And quite a lot of fun too. This is very relaxing process, I have to say. So as you can see here, I've got some more heavier coral on here on the background, and then just added little highlights and touches again of the coral along with some of my floral elements on here too. So a lot of fun to work with these, and a great combination. If you enjoy working with markers and you enjoy working with inks, the two of them can go together really beautifully. And then all I did was grabbed a pair of scissors and did some fussy cutting around the outside edge. And then I've got my tag that will fit into my stenciled bag. And I added a little bit of jute twine up here at the top to coordinate with the jute twine that I've wrapped around my bag. And then I've got a really fun little project. Quick, easy, and just really enjoyable, kind of therapeutic to do a little bit of that coloring and that stenciling as well. And I think a super fun greeting to share with someone special. This card also has a soft blending effect, and I've also got some easy stenciling here on the background. The stamps that I'm using are the Anemone designs. Now I've stamped the tag onto white cardstock. As before, I heat embossed the design before I colored with my dye-based ink. So let's take a look at this process. I'll move aside my stamp set and we'll swap places here. So as you can see, I've got my image ready to go. I just need to choose my inks, and I've chosen quite a few for this one. I've got the Buttercup, and I've also got Warm Honey. I added in the Pear Green. I thought a little bit of teal might be nice. I used some Electric Blue, and finally the Hot Pink. Now you can do fewer colors if you want to, but I just couldn't resist. These colors are so much fun to work with, and they come together really nicely. So what I would suggest you do when you're choosing your colors, figure out which ones are the lightest. So you can see my Buttercup is the lightest. This is the one that I'm going to start out with. The Hot Pink is going to be the most intense. So this is the last finishing touch that I'll do. So I'm kind of working from lightest all the way to darkest. So I'll scoot aside these guys for now, and I'll start with my Buttercup. Now, as we looked at before, the yellow colors, the Buttercup and Warm Honey as well, just give a beautiful, soft, kind of a glow, I guess you would say, and helps to sort of mute back some of the white of my cardstock. So I'm going to focus this in the center and then just go all around my image, again with a light sort of circular touch. I'm not putting in a lot of pressure here, but I think you can see the contrast between the center and the outside edge here. So that's with the Buttercup, my lightest color. Then I'm going to add in some of this Warm Honey. Love this color. And I'm going to focus this a bit more on the flowers. And again, just adding in as much or as little pressure as I want. These two colors together just combine really beautifully. Now, I will say I could stop here. If I was in a hurry, or if this was the finishing look that I wanted to have, I could stop here, maybe add a sentiment or a dazzle or a stamped word in the center and be ready to go. That would look really nice. But instead, I'm going to add in some green just to kind of focus around on my leaves. Now I'm going to swap brushes. I'm going for a smaller brush size because I have a smaller area that I want to get in here with these leaves. I'm not worried about trying to color in the leaves precisely. I just want to get a bit of a touch of green in here. And this is a pale green. I'm going to add in a little bit of teal as well, so more color to come. And some more down here. Just kind of covering up some of that yellow and adding some depth in here. Okay, so that's my pear green. And then again, working into my darker colors, I've got some teal. Now the teal is, I'll swipe off a little bit here. You can see it's a bit more intense. So I'm going to take a much, much lighter bit of pressure here, because you can always add more, but you can't erase it. So I want to be a little bit light-handed here. And there we go. So I've got my teal in here, and then a little bit of electric blue. And again, I'm going to keep using the same brush. And again, see, you can see how intense that color will be. So again, just a bit of a light effect here, coming along the edges. And we'll go over here as well. I'm going to add some more color to those flowers with my hot pink in just a second. But for right now, I'm just adding my shadows in here. So there it is with the electric blue. So I've got some blue, I've got some teal, I've got some green. Again, if I wanted to, I could stop here. This looks really pretty. But if I want to add in some pink, let's do it. I'm going to grab a slightly larger brush. And again, this color is, as I mentioned, pretty intense. So when I come in with my color, I'm going to once again start with a light touch, and you can see already I've added in really nice bit of color here. It works beautifully and blends out beautifully with that yellow. And I'll do the same up here. So there we go. You can start to see where this is coming together. Super easy to do, and of course you can add in more if you want to. I quite like this soft and subtle effect. Maybe a little bit of pink down here in the corner just to create a bit of balance, and then there we go. So this is what I've done to create this focal element on here, and then once again just trimmed around the outside edges with a pair of scissors and popped it onto the front of my card. Now the background on here is the Stunning Swirls stencil, and I used warm honey onto cardstock from the At the Shore collection, and this gives a really nice kind of subtle, almost tone-on-tone effect. And I'm telling you, that warm honey ink is just a real winner. Super versatile. You can use it for so many different effects. So that's what I did right onto my cardstock. I've got some metallic touches here from the Gold Fancy Border Dazzle sticker sheet. So I've used them here, here, and here. And then I've also got some Hunkydory diamond sparkles on the flower centers and the top of my tag. Now I adhered this with some foam tape, so I've got a bit of dimension, a little bit of gingham ribbon tucked in behind here as well. And then I have a script dazzle in the center with some hearts that also come on that dazzle set. Then for the card inside, I've got some more of the cardstock from At the Shore. I've got a little leftover snippet of my stenciled cardstock, and I've added that, and then two little offcut pieces of the At the Shore cardstock and another dazzle sentiment in here too. Now I've got another card project that I want to show you. Let me bring this one in here too. While I had my colored inks, all of them, out on my work surface, I just couldn't resist, and I thought it would be a lot of fun to combine all of those colors with that Stunning Swirls stencil. So here you can see I've got a variety of inks. I've blended the warm honey I've got a light touch of pear green. I've also got some hot pink in here too. So all you need to do for this is simply adhere your stencil down in place with a little bit of low tack tape. Again, as with the previous blending, you want to start with your lighter colors and then build up. And that's just going to keep your brushes cleaner and your stencil cleaner, and you can build up your color from there. And then I've added on here a sentiment from the stamp set. Pop this up with a little bit of foam tape. The butterflies are stamped and heat embossed with black ink and clear embossing powder, and I fussy cut those and then attach them onto the front of the card with a little bit of foam tape. And again, I've got more of those Hunkydory diamond sparkles. For the card inside, I have just a portion of that stamp, which I've done just onto a little scrap of white cardstock, which I die cut into an oval. This is a really easy process to do, and this is another fun way of using your ink. So let me slide these over. I'm going to grab my Misty, and I've got my stamp on here. Let's see if I've got enough space on here. And then what I'm going to do is ink this up with my hot pink. Got this, and I'm going to use the holly green. So I only need a portion of this. I'm just going to ink this up. I'm getting the flower portion on here, and then also overlapping to get some of the leaves. And then I'm just going to position this down like so. And lift, whoops, and lift. And there you can see I've got just a portion of that stamp design. And so from here, I die cut my oval piece, and I was able to get a really fun effect that looks like this. So I only needed a portion of that. I did end up accidentally getting a bit of the line of the border, and I simply covered that up with a die cut, or with a fussy cut butterfly. Again, another one stamped, and I've added my Dazzle sentiment on here, mounted this up onto a scalloped oval, and I've got a really nice coordinating inside of my card as well. So you can see these stamps are super versatile in lots of different ways that you can use them. Now I've got one more way I want to show you with some fussy cutting and layering. I'm using the Daffodil Joy tag image for this card focal, but after stamping and coloring it, I fussy cut around the oval portion of this to create a completely different look. So you can have the tag effect of the original stamp design, but you can also have a different effect. And in fact, I stamped and colored this twice. First, to get my base piece, and then a second time to fussy cut just the blossoms so I could pop those up on some foam tape and get a dimensional effect. It's a really fun way to get double the use of your stamped images. So let's take a look. I'm going to start with my stamped image, and I've stamped this onto watercolor cardstock. If you don't have a watercolor cardstock, a good sturdy cardstock, nice and smooth, will do the trick too. You want to have something that will accept a watery medium though, because we're going to use our dye-based inks as paints. So I'm working onto my craft mat. I've got 3 of my dye-based inks here. I've got that warm honey, of course. I have the electric blue, and I have the holly green. Now I've also got a water mister on hand, and I have a water brush too. So what I'm going to do is simply take my dye-based ink and press it onto my craft mat to just add a little bit of ink on here. So I'm using my craft mat as my palette. There's that electric blue. And same as before, I'm going to start with my lightest color, which is that warm honey, and I'm going to just get my brush a little bit wet and pick up some of this color and simply paint in my floral image here. So what I do recommend, now I've stamped my image with my VersaFine. Do make sure that your ink is completely dry before you add any watery medium to it. You can let it air dry as I've done You can also give it a quick zip zap with your heat tool and speed up that drying time. So here I've got my flowers colored. Then I'm just going to rinse off my brush, and I'm going to do a very, very watery, very light color of this electric blue. And kind of test it off to the side. Yeah, maybe a little bit more water there. And simply color in the background. So you can use your dye-based inks almost like a watercolor paint. Now I do recommend that you experiment with how much water you add in proportion to your ink, because that electric blue, for example, could be very intense. So just depending on the look you're going for. Okay, so there's my electric blue, and then I'll come in here and pick up some of that green. And I would also recommend, if you're working with colors that are going to be quite close to one another on the image, like with a background and the stem, for example, let each area dry before you go on to the next one. But just in the interest of our video today, I'm just going to go for it. So there you can see, really easy to do and a great way to get double the look from your inks. And then of course, all you need to do is simply grab a tissue or something to clean up your inks from your craft mat. Then let your piece dry and you are ready to use it as you wish. So here again, as you can see, I've trimmed out that center section, and I did stamp those a second time, fussy cut around the just the blossoms and foam tape them on top. Now for my stencil background, here I'm also using that gorgeous script stencil design, and I'm doing a watercolor reverse stenciling technique. So I'm going to bring in my stencil, the beautiful script on here. Now when I'm doing this technique, because this is script that is sort of readable, I'm going to work on the reverse side of it, so on the back side. And I'm just going to pop this onto a stack of scrap paper here. I'm going to take my holly green ink, and that's what I'm going to do my inking with. I've got my water mister on hand, that's going to be for my background. And then I've got my cardstock that I'm going to do my stenciling onto. So again, I'm just going to grab that ink pad and press it right onto the stencil itself. So I'm not trying to go through the stencil, although I'm probably doing that inadvertently. I just want to get the ink onto the plastic. And this works really well with any stencil that has a lot of plastic area. So very fine detailed stencils maybe won't give you the look that you want. Okay, so now I've got this. I'm going to give it a couple of spritzes with my water mister. Again, the more water you add, the more diluted your color will be. Pop that down and then grab my cardstock, and I'm going to simply place this carefully right on top and smooth that down. Now again, you're going to want to use a sturdy, smooth cardstock for this. You can use a watercolor cardstock. I like just a regular smooth white, and that will do the trick. And then I'm going to lift this off, and you can see I've got a really cool kind of abstract watercolor effect on here. Now the areas where I've got more water, it's a little bit more watercolory. The areas where I didn't have so much water, you've got a nice crisp design on here. Every time you do this, you're going to have a completely different look, and I found that I had some that were really crisp and some that were a little bit less so. So it really just depends on the amount of water you're using, the amount of pressure you're using, and then you can create a really fun background that looks like this. So this is our final card project of the day. Let's take a quick peek on the inside. Here I've done some just regular stenciling with a blending brush. I've added the sentiment down here at the bottom, and it creates a really fun and comprehensive look from the stenciling on the front, reverse stenciling on the front, to the stenciling on the inside. And that is our final card project of the day today. And a big thank you to our friends at Hunkydory, as always, for these really versatile stamps and very fun stencils. I had a great time playing with these and, of course, with their inks as well. And a special thanks to you for joining me today. We're really glad you're here and we're happy you're part of the Paper Wishes family. Do feel free to leave a comment. We love to hear what you think. Each item can be purchased separately and you can see them below. However, we've also bundled them into a creative money saver just for you. For the money saver, see this webisode on paperwishes.com. And if you're watching us on YouTube, just have a look in the description box below this video. You'll find a link that will take you to our Paper Wishes webisodes page and you can see everything I just mentioned. If you enjoyed our video today, we'd really appreciate a thumbs up. It helps people to find our channel. And don't forget to subscribe. We create 3 to 5 videos each week, so there's always something fun to inspire your creative spirit.